Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast. I'm Tom Rennie. Yes, that Tom Rennie. Alongside me is an MLS legend, a top broadcaster, a man whose youthful zest makes me feel like he has been with Sir Francis Drake when he found the fountain of youth, because there's no way a man's skin in his mid to late 40s should look as clear and fresh as that. It is Mr. Brian Dunseth. How are you, mate? You all right?
I'm good. Had a bit of a travel issue this weekend. Sorted it out. Delays, NCAA tournaments. You got weather, and just outrageousness. But everything's good, man. Everything's good. How are you doing? How are you holding up this fine? What day are we? Tuesday. Hey, West Ham won.
Yes, they did. I mean, this is not going to be a West Ham themed podcast because we're not particularly interesting this week, but I will say it was such an ordeal. It was such an ordeal, and they beat Southampton 1-0. They've got Newcastle on Wednesday, and you know what it is? It's like, Tantalus, the myth of Tantalus, that he keeps pushing the boulder up the hill, and just when he thinks he gets there, it goes back down again. He's always tantalizingly close. That's where it comes from. And I feel like we're currently at a moment in this season, and we're going to get to Everton in a little while in the show, where I can see it. I'm touching it. I'm just reaching out and touching it. If they would, and they're not going to do this, by the way, so I'm not saying this is going to happen, because it categorically is not. But if West Ham could beat Newcastle on Wednesday, right? Just if, and bad teams beat good teams, it does happen. If they beat Newcastle and beat Fulham, they have 33 points by the time we record again. And if we've got 33 points, that's statistically across the last 15 years, just 3 points from safety with 9 to go. And I just want everyone listening to the Week in the Tackle podcast, everyone who's going to listen to our shows this week, even if you hate West Ham, if you love this program and love us talking about other things, if West Ham beat Newcastle and Fulham, I promise to you right now, I will shut the up about West Ham, except for Conference League, for the rest of this season. I will not mention West Ham in the Premier League again until the season is over. If they win these 2 games, because it's over. It'll be finished. And we can concentrate on winning that dog European tournament we're in. But sorry, Tim. I just want, if that happens, this is over and we can move on. Don't you just want that?
Well, I feel like this is a bigger ask than me asking you to get a tattoo if you do win Conference League.
Are we still doing that? Is that
it was on the table at the start of the season.
Yes.
Oh, how quickly one forgets.
That's true.
Horsey.
Listen, so that's a guaranteed promise from me that I won't talk about West Ham again. Oh yeah, we're live now on video, aren't we? Damn. I crossed my fingers there for the YouTube subscribers. If you're listening on the podcast, as many people do now, and you should recommend this to your friends. You can also watch the show on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, we're also a podcast. Vice versa, cross promo. Right. Let's get to the big stories this week, Danny, because there are so many, and we've got to find out where you've been and what's been going on in terms of MLS as well. How did Salt Lake get on against Columbus Crew? Technically, you've got a foot in both camps, but well, I hear. But let's get to the big story of the week, and that is Graham Potter. We'll start with Graham Potter because we're going to build up the tension for the Brendan Rodgers impression. Sacked at Chelsea after the game against Aston Villa. Sacked after 7 months. Sacked after achieving the joint lowest points per game return of any manager to take charge of 20-plus games for Chelsea in Premier League history. A worse PPG than Glenn Hoddle, Ian Porterfield, Ruud Gullit, and yes, Frank Lampard. Stories coming out in the press following the sacking that people were calling him Harry and Hogwarts behind his back, which I'm less mithered about because it's football. Everyone has a nickname. Yeah. People used to call me Big Rennie. Sorry, Tim. Didn't bother me. Not because I have a big, because I am a big.
Oh, okay, that's true.
There you go. It's more literal. Yeah. And I've got more in terms of data on this, Danny, but I want your view on it because I'll talk a bit about, I was doing the Chelsea-Aston Villa game and it was a fascinating watch. And I want to talk about it from that perspective as a commentator and being involved in the game. But I want your view on this because I heard Rodney Marsh earlier this week. In fact, I've been listening to Rodney for 7 months on this saying he's out of his depth. I mean, he's just out of his depth. I wanted him to do well because I'm English and English coaches, as you know, suck the mother load. We just have no reputation globally. No English person, for those that don't know this, has ever won the Premier League. Dunny, it's happened. It felt inevitable. What's your take on it?
I wonder when it's all said and done, what the true number is relating to the firing of Thomas Tuchel and the acquisition of not only Graham Potter, but like 37 other people at Brighton who came to Chelsea Football Club alongside of him, because it is inevitable that they will all be wiped, with the exception of maybe one or two that have, quote unquote, done a great job and that maybe aren't loyal to Graham Potter. The reality, Tom, is that we all wanted him to succeed. His story and how he had carved a fantastic little niche for himself, the path less traveled, and getting to the point. And remember, when the Arsenal job was open, people were talking about Graham Potter as well.
Yep.
And Graham Potter had made it very clear how happy he was at Brighton, and what he had done in a short amount of time was really, really impressive. And by the way, I do like that little side slap of Roberto De Cherby coming out and saying, "Hey, thanks, by the way, for the club and the squad that you left me. Double thumbs up, hey yo." But yeah, listen, I think if you can separate the man from the manager, and I know it's difficult to do, because at the end of the day, I would do what I've always said that we've done with, let's use Jesse Marsch, for example. We hold these guys accountable in a situation where we say, at the end of the day, Tom, it's about points. It's about results. It's about wins. It's about losses. It's about draws. It's about lifting trophies. These are all data points. These are all the differences between success and failure. And unfortunately for Graham Potter, he was given probably one of the longest leashes that could be given in this situation. Because when you step back and you really think about it, Todd Boehly comes in, wipes Granovskaya, wipes Petr Cech, kind of from the inside out, has full control, starts playing Football Manager and with his monopoly money, and spends an outrageous amount of money. And you go back to the Tuchel time, you go back to, did he want Cristiano Ronaldo? You go back to whatever, the shits and giggles that come along with the start of the season. At the end of the day, what became unsustainable is you have two managers effectively that didn't have a preseason with the squad of players that they are inheriting in real time. And the summer squad versus then the January transfer window squad, and trying to figure out, how do I get the best out of this group, while, by the way, having to have what I'd call the sweat equity of success in the Premier League and or in other countries, that these players will respect you immediately. It's a huge drop off in terms of experience when you talk about Timmy Tickles to Graham Potter, Harry Potter, all the nicknames that he was given.
Harry Potter. No one called him Harry Potter. Not one person.
It's like how I called you Tom Henney the other day because you were super positive, and then Tom Rennie showed back up.
Yes. I like how you're using your just poor ability to remember and then deliver names and pretending it's a feature of what you do and not a
James up. Tommy Porter.
Yes.
Harry Potter.
Sorry, Tim.
Hashtags. But listen, the reality is, this is even more egg on the face of Todd Boehly. They've gotten through past Borussia Dortmund, so they're in a fantastic situation in the Champions League, yet they are struggling mightily. But again, is it really that different? I mean, is this real? Like, I know that Chelsea's been in a great run of form recently in terms of what they've accomplished in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But like, they do this. They do this mid-table finish where they're out of Europe completely. They run the table, they win the Champions League, they qualify for Europe the next year because the squad's fantastic, and they get the right manager in charge. But the reality for me, Tom, is that, is anything really different from the Roman Abramovich days to now? Because all we kept wondering was, okay, stability, plan, future, runway, pathway, success, bags of money, best players in the world available, overpaying, get them through the door.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. They're now going to be on their third manager if they get Nagelsmann through the door. And Fabrizio Romano is reporting that talks have been going for the last 2 days. And it looks like Nagelsmann is lining him, or interested in hearing from Chelsea board what this looks like going forward. I still say, don't touch this team until the summer. Let have a full preseason. No need to drink from a fire hose at this stage because you don't know your players. But a guy like Nagelsmann will at least have the immediate respect because he's created kind of this atmosphere around him. But by the way, how crazy would it be? Timmy Tickles takes over Bayern. Nagelsmann takes over Chelsea. I don't know, man. Wild going down at Chelsea. Sorry, Tim. Can I say that? I don't know.
There's so much in this, Danny. There's so much in what you've said, and there's so much in the story that we're never going to have time to cover it all here. But there's a few elements I do want to discuss. Firstly, the performance against Aston Villa the weekend just gone was an abomination. It just was. It was the culmination of weeks and weeks of dismal performances. And there was part of this. I did want to bring this. I know you like this. We're doing the game. Dave Kitson and I are doing the game for Premier League Live. And sometimes the effects microphones are quite close to people in the crowd. Stamford Bridge, very close. And what happens is usually whoever's doing the sound, they'll just turn down the effects microphone if someone's coming out too audibly. So we have like 8, 12 effects microphones coming out to our listeners. There was a small boy. A small boy was sitting by a microphone, and we kept hearing him so loud in our cans during the game, right?
Which is the worst, yeah.
It's the worst. It's so off-putting, and there's nothing I can do about it. So we had to reference it because people could hear it, and we could hear it so loud, and we're trying to get it turned down. Nothing we can do. But it was actually brilliant for the game because Dave kept saying to me, Dave's a very good analyst, and he kept saying to me, "Why is Reece James playing centre half? Like what? Why is that still happening?" And then at half-time, he brought on Madueke at the right-hand side, who's got no right boot, and still played Reece James centre half. And there was a small boy next to a microphone, and he said, Dad, it's James on the wing. Dad, he's not, Dad, I don't understand what's happening. He's not putting James on the wing. Dad, Daddy, it doesn't make any sense." It's a child, was the impression I was doing there.
You can go so high that you actually cut out your own microphone.
Oh, did that count a little bit?
Yeah, because your voice went so high, you cut it out.
I'll do it more gently. Here we go. Dad, why is he not putting Reece James on the wing? Dad, I don't understand.
It's like a dog whistle, how high you can get.
It's incredible. I have incredible versatility.
Yeah.
The
You are so talented.
You know what? Clip that and we'll use that as a trailer. But even a small child could see what was necessary. Everyone could see what was necessary. And he would not do it. And it's bits like that, Danny, where you just think, what were you thinking? Was he trying to do the Antonio Conte?
No.
It's over.
No,
sack me because I'm spent.
No, I don't think it is. I think you have 2 to 3 teams at Chelsea. That's the problem. You've got
they've only got one Reece James. They've got a load of players,
100%,
but
100%.
no one's going to Reece James.
I hear you. I hear you. But to my point is, every time I watch Chelsea, I always knew either at halftime or the 60-minute mark, the team and the team shape was going to look drastically different. Every single game. And it didn't matter who started. The same issues. You got your number 9, Aubameyang. He's pushed out for whatever reason, never getting a chance. You let Romelu Lukaku go after dropping 100 million on him because you want to allow space for Timmy Tickles to have the start of the season. You play Kai Havertz as a 9. He scores some goals, but he's not really a 9. He's more of an off the shoulder, but whatever, talented enough. But you look at this bloated squad of fucking fantastic players. We've totally broke the record for curses. Sorry, Tim. I guess since just moving to YouTube. But you've blown the squad on attacking players and outside backs and central defenders. And all you do is, okay, he didn't score in the first half. Take him off. Who comes in? Pulisic gets a start. If he doesn't score by halftime, okay, take him off. Let's bring in Mudryk. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Like, that's the manager's fault, isn't it? That's Graham Potter's fault. That's him being unable to manage a big squad, him being able to work with these players. Because we can talk about, look, Todd Bowley, we did this piece at the very start of the podcast. He was the biggest pigeon in football during the last summer transfer window. He is Homer Simpson in the Bart the Carney episode, walking through the carnival, and the two carnies look at him and are like, right, there's a pigeon. We can get as much money out of him as possible. And that was every agent in football during the summer. There was no reason to buy Mudryk. There was no reason to buy Madueke. There was no reason to buy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And there was no reason to buy them for the fees you did as well. And that's all true. But maybe 5 weeks ago, we were together. And I told you, I said it. What he needed to do, here's my team. Here's how we win a game. Full stop, the end. And what did he do instead? He tinkered and changed and tried to outsmart everybody. And he might have a degree in emotional intelligence, Graham Potter, but the man is dumb. The man is dumb when it comes to working with a team of this caliber. He has cocked this. He has cocked it.
But that's what we said
now. Like no other manager ever could. If this was like, we're being generous to Graham Potter because I'm English and I want English people not to be thought of as a joke. on an international level. But if this was Avram Grant, who I detest, I would have been ripping him to shreds, Rodney Marsh style, week in, week out. He's been awful.
This was the biggest challenge, and I have said, like, while it's entertaining when a manager's sacked afterwards to find out when they pull the curtain back and people start chirping, and you're getting more and more interviews that are coming out with well-placed sources that are then leaking stories, situations that have happened underneath the previous manager's reign, as to what happened in the nicknames. It happened with Bob Bradley. It happened with Jesse Marsh to an extent. It happens with some of these managers where all of a sudden the players now know that they're gone, and there's less accountability, and they can start telling their stories outside of the WhatsApp groups with their buddies and their friends, and it's entertaining. But I have a problem with it. But this is the same thing we talked about for Graham Potter when he took the job. It's not the tactics. It's not. It's earning the respect of the players. And walking into Chelsea is completely different. He's not no disrespect to Brighton, right? Brighton's done an extraordinary job of what they've done. He's not shopping at Super Target. He's shopping at Gucci now. It's a completely different thing, right? So the way that he manages the group, the way that he managed coming through Sweden, getting Brighton, doing a phenomenal job, winning at Manchester United early in the season with all these players, great. But now you've taken over Chelsea.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you. I wonder, and it's a leading question, but I wonder how much these players have experienced so much managerial turnover throughout their tenure at Chelsea Football Club that they're just to the point where, again, they can, for the most part, tune out what the managers are saying and just focus on, okay, we know what we have to do. We can make the tweaks and we can change the tactics, and we can play 3 in the back. We can play 4 in the back, play 5 in the back. We can do this 3-2, play a hybrid of 2 holding and 3 attacking and 1 striker, all these different things. But at the end of the day, we know how to play, because I just feel like
they don't know. But they don't.
But the mentality is that they outlast the manager. I wonder how much that could be a reality in this conversation.
I mean, I think everyone in the Premier League and in most leagues at this point, I mean, I think Serie A has sacked 50% of managers. The Bundesliga is like 40% of managers. The Liga is 25% of managers. Like, everyone gets sacked at some point or other. There's more sackings this season than ever, which I want to get to a little bit later in the program. But I don't know if that's true. I don't know how much that all the players weren't buying into Graham Potter. I think they didn't know what to buy into. I think there was no definitive style of play. There was no clear thing that he was trying to do. I think he was getting an incredible amount of leeway. But I don't know on that score. I think we'll find out in the next few weeks if Bruno, Brighton legend, stays in charge for 2, 3, 4 games. If they win 3 or 4 of them, we'll get the feeling of the players can do whatever they want, and they were doing as you say.
But what
right?
changes? I heard this conversation with you and Tommy this morning on Grumpy Pundits. What changes? Like Stellini at Tottenham. What changes? What, because one face is gone, one voice is gone? I get that every assistant can do their own thing. They're in charge now, right? Oh, hey, what about if we change this? Or hey, what if we no, it's my team. That's a stupid idea. No. They're challenging the managers. They're theoretically thinking about substitutions and changes. What about this adjustment? What about this? What about spotting things that, it's all interest level conversations. But at the end of the day, they're all under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So when we sack managers, when we watch teams sack managers, really, what's the difference? Like what is Bruno going to bring to the table that is practical, right? Practical with the tactics right now, that is going to be different than what Graham Potter has been doing this entire time. Because I think there's an argument to be said, like, even and you were going all in on Tottenham at Everton in the 1-1 draw with how diabolical they were playing with the 1-0 lead, and you were spot on, but like, that's exactly what we've been watching Tottenham do all season. So is it the players? Is it the manager? Is it more of the same? Why wouldn't you give someone that's a fresh voice, that is on the outside of that immediate staff looking in, to then walk into the group and say, all right, enough. That was fucking horrific. Sorry, Tim. I can't stop right now. We've got to get back to basics. We've got to go back to the simplicity of how you, okay, guys, what's the best formation for this group? Where's the leadership council? How do you guys want to play? Because right there, when you empower the players, Rennie, all of a sudden, you talk about that bump, you get the bump because now the players feel like they're being listened to as opposed to they're being talked to, if that makes sense. I know it's empowering players and maybe it goes too far.
It's treating the players like the adults they are not in that analysis. And I don't think that you can go to these 23-year-olds that are either down tools for the previous manager or they find themselves out of form. And again, you've been in these collectives.
I have been.
Half are out of form, half are in form, half like this manager, half didn't, half got trouble with the wife, half got trouble with the kids. You know, you all these little groups and factions.
Yeah, for sure.
They've all got their own problems. So you've got to try and find a way through that together. And then you're going to them without a leader. There's a reason these clubs and football teams and sports bodies and everything in my work has a manager, because the manager has a purpose. And you don't just then toss it over to the group and say, sort yourselves out. Because what will happen is the kind of rabble we saw in that Tottenham game. That was a rabble. And it wasn't just what we saw with Antonio Conte this season. It was significantly worse. It was directionless nonsense. And essentially, Christian Stellini, who is a nobody, he's a complete nobody. No one's listening to Christian Stellini, and no one's going to listen to Bruno at Chelsea. They might get through one or two games. There's two goalkeeping coaches being put in charge of Leicester City, for Christ's sake. Like, no one knows who they are. One of them has been in charge like 5 or 6 times temporarily since 2015. And now they're asking the Chelsea manager to beat Real Madrid, whoever that is. They're asking Bruno, who was the in the stands analyst at Brighton at the start of this season, who's never picked a team in his life going into the Liverpool game on Tuesday, to beat Real Madrid. They're asking Christian Stellini, who's been Antonio Conte's yes man at 3 clubs, to get Tottenham in the Champions League when, judging by the Everton game, it was a miracle they could have gone third anyway if they'd have beat Everton. They're asking these 2 goalkeeping coaches. One of them, I think, is called Adam Sandler. That's not exactly right, but all I can think of now is they put fucking Happy Gilmore in charge and Billy Madison alongside him, sorry, Tim, to try and get Leicester safe. It doesn't make any sense to me. You don't sack unless there's a plan. You don't sack
I'd agree with
unless you know what comes next. And none of this lot, none of these chief executives have thought what comes next. It's just pure, endless panic button with house money. And that's how you get to where you are now.
Well,
and that's what Chelsea is the biggest example of. Todd Bowley is not even considering balancing the books. And what's going to happen next with Chelsea if they don't qualify for the Champions League, which, spoily, they are not going to. It's sail. Yeah. They've got to balance those books. Otherwise, they're going to be in massive trouble. And next season, folks, Julian Nagelsmann, if you want to go there, good luck to you, son, because they're not going to be in any European competition. They've got to get back in the top 4. They've got the old top 5 they used to compete against. Plus, they're going to have Aston Villa, who are going to be phenomenal next season. They've hired a world-class manager, in my view. We'll talk about that another time, I'm sure. You've got Newcastle United and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. The top 4 has never been less guaranteed. And they've got to do that whilst selling, whilst dealing with a restless fan base. Chelsea are the biggest example of what you're talking about. Well, everyone's f***ing it massively now because they're incompetent.
Well, and to your point about having a plan, again, this is I don't care if you have the nicest gentleman in the world as your manager and you have a phenomenal relationship with him. You have to, through intermediaries, have a list and contacts. And the only way for me that this looks good for Todd Bowley and company is if they can secure Julian Nagelsmann's signature and immediate placement on the bench as soon as possible.
But he just got sacked at Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich are not clear at the top of the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
And they have maybe the easiest title to win in European football. And he was just sacked for being difficult to work with, skiing when he should have been at work,
allegedly,
and unable to deal with the squad. I mean, that's their reason for sacking him. We don't know how true that is, but that's what they've come out and basically said.
Yeah.
And so he comes in
alleged.
what? And he can deal with 30. Yeah, alleged. I don't know. I'm not going to work there. Yeah, it is alleged. Am I not saying alleged? It's alleged. What's wrong for me? Jesus. Sorry, Tim. So it's alleged, right?
Yeah.
So what exactly is he going to do? Like, all right, maybe he's got a bit more pedigree than Graham Potter, fine,
Yeah.
but he's still a young coach who's got to deal with 30 plus players, an
Yeah.
unhappy dressing room,
Yeah.
all this nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, how is that going to improve things? Like, again, I want to move on. That's a
Yeah.
I want to ask you this other question, right? Because I want to get to Tottenham and things. But the only thing I want to ask you before we move on from Chelsea is that all season long, we've had a lot of really good Chelsea experts who know the club inside and out, certainly better than you and I do, and many of our listeners. And they've said they're backing Potter, backing Potter, backing Potter.
Whole
right?
time.
The whole time. Now, it only made sense to me, and it's going to lead into our next conversation about Brendan Rodgers. It only made sense to me, any of it, if they were going to let him be manager for this long through these myriad failures and poor performances, if these guys were right, that they were going to stick with him this season, ride it off, give him the Real Madrid games, then next season, give him the summer, the preseason you were talking about earlier on, and then see what happened at that point. Jettison a few players that he did want, doesn't want.
Yeah.
Why have they gone this long and then suddenly decided now? The season has been over in terms of the Premier League for 3 weeks. They're in the Champions League quarters against Real Madrid. They won. They're in it.
Yeah.
So why was the Villa game the reason?
The only way it makes sense to me is if they've lined up Nagelsmann or Luis Enrique or Pochettino or whoever they think has the gravitas to walk inside of that locker room and immediately command respect. Because there's no reason, and I would say this for Brendan Rodgers as well. Conte is a different beast because of the way he napalmed the joint before heading back on Ryanair to Italy for a couple of days during the international break. To your point, and I know you said this on Grumpy Pundits a couple of times, you're looking at 30 points available.
Yeah,
27 to 30 points available at this stage of the season. If you were going to make your move, you should have made your move in March. Yeah. Why would you wait until April to make your move? At the start of March, give yourself a runway, give yourself a couple games to get your feet underneath you.
And that was late. That would have been late
100%
as well. That was the latest possible moment, was at least 3 weeks ago. Brendan Rodgers has gone as well. There was an amazing thing happened to me at the weekend. I was at the West Ham game, as I mentioned, the Southampton game, right? And you know how long it took for Naef Aguer's goal to be given?
Oh, it's forever.
Right. But the reason I bring it up here is that when the free kick was taken, Brendan Rodgers was Leicester manager. When the goal was given, Brendan Rodgers had been sacked. There was this amazing 3 minutes where the kind of in between the goal being scored and the goal being given, we got the news about it being sacked.
Everybody's phone lit up. Yeah.
Everyone, like the whole press desk, everyone's gone off. I'm sitting behind Jonathan Pearce, who's doing the game for the BBC, and all these guys, and everyone's the whole stadium's lighting up with it because, you know, the VAR check's going on. I'm going to stop swearing now, but you're doing nothing. No one's doing anything. You can't. They don't let the people in the crowd know what's happening. It's a really terrific idea. But Brendan Rodgers, and I want you, first of all, I want you to say to me, I've got every confidence that I would have kept the club in the Premier League.
Got a turd in my pants. Myself. Sorry, Tim. Did it again. Got every confidence in the world in myself. I'm a British manager, not bad. Beat Marcelo Bielsa twice, I think. But I've totally bottled it this season.
What?
Poor James Madison. Poor James Madison.
Oh, he's gone wobbly here. He's got a bit DiCaprio in Gangs of New York.
I've got three envelopes. Which one are you in, Tom Rennie?
I'm in the one that wants to hear this impression more, so I hope he comes back.
Me too.
Very, very soon. But it's another similar question to you. So it's similar ground. It's a very different situation in terms of the relegation battle. They were 1-0 up against Crystal Palace at the weekend, somehow contrived to lose 2-1 to this awful Palace team. Let them have
Good
20
goal.
shots in the first half, which is
great free kick
story.
Yeah.
I mean, it came off the goalkeeper's backside. I don't know how great it was. It's 1 point in 5. It's no wins in 7. And Brendan Rodgers has gone. Now, this has been an ongoing narrative this season. I think they didn't win in the opening 7 games this season. They stuck with him. We've had discussions and speculations about, is it because of the potential payout to him or not? Whether the fact they're in the bottom 3 means the payout is less has been something I read today. Again, that's pure speculation. I've got no information on that. Alleged, of course. But what do you make of the fact he's gone here? And not only that, we were chatting to a Leicester expert earlier today who basically said, there isn't going to be a new manager. There was a speculative email to Graham Potter's people who said, I'm going to take some time. I can't manage 3 of the clubs this year. That would be insanity. Plus, I've just got paid £30 million. I'm going to Disneyland, said Graham Potter with that.
Yeah.
Slash Yosemite Sam. But I can't believe it. They're sacking him with 10 games to go. They're playing almost everyone around them, home and away.
Yeah.
Really winnable games. And they're going to give it to a couple of coaches for 10 games.
So let me start here. I think Brendan Rodgers is a really good manager. I really do. For as much as I tease him, I think he's a good manager.
What?
The problem is when he wins a big game for me and the arrogance starts to show, I think that's where I like to have fun about the words that are coming out of his mouth. I'm old enough to remember when he turned down the Arsenal link. He was like, "Why would I? I've got Leicester City. Why? Come on! What are we doing here?" I do. There's a part of me that does feel bad for him because when he took over Leicester City, what they were then versus what they are now is significantly different. And the question will always come back to if Brendan Rodgers is given a war chest and given a quote unquote top 6 team, could he be a great manager for said club? I think he could be a really solid manager. I really do. But there's a part of me that feels bad for him again, because the decline in the investment in the team, watching players being sold, not watching them figuring out ways to find those same players, those diamonds, polish them up, sell them, make some big money, or have the ability to compete. They're just not competing. And that's fine. They're not they're shopping at Super Target, right? So when and Super Target's a great store. Almost cursed. Yes, saved you, Tim. But the reality is it was a slow decline, and the team started to decline. The quality of the squad started to decline, and he had a responsibility in there as well. Whether he wanted his $12 million on gardening leave or whether he is going to get $3 million at this stage, at the end of the day, I just don't understand why go in a different direction. It always seemed like there was enough respect between he and the club. And he always towed the line of like, am I trying to get fired, or am I telling you what the reality is right now? Yeah. Or am I resetting expectations, not only for ourselves in the locker room and for myself as a manager, but for the fan base and the general media? Because he's a pretty big manager when it comes to Premier League. He's a name that will be going forward linked to whatever vacancies are available. Yeah. At least for the next couple of seasons. And I could totally see him back in the Premier League at the start of next season, depending on what direction certain clubs go in. But you're correct. I don't understand right now, with how many games left, doesn't seem like he lost the locker room, unless guys like Jamie Vardy, guys like James Maddison are going to the ownership, going to the board and saying, you got to get him out. But it didn't seem like it, because Madison put up what I thought was a really cool post on social media, which seemed to indicate that as a manager and as a man, he had the respect of James Maddison.
You know what's quite interesting to me in terms of management, and I want to task you in a minute to see how many you can remember of who's been sacked and moved on this season. But there's never been so many. There has never been so many sackings in a Premier League season. It is a record. 13 managerial changes, 12 sackings and 1 departure. That departure was Graham Potter, who has since been sacked at another club. It's insanity. Are we at the breaking point here of the idiocy of this season, that maybe there might be, I don't know if it's punishment is the right word, but we need to make a fundamental change here, because sacking the manager, it's the only thing you can do now because there's no transfer window. But sacking the manager for another manager, who has it really improved this season? Has it improved Southampton? No. Has it improved Leeds? No. Has it improved Bournemouth? Maybe, but not really. Has it improved Everton? I think it's an argument to say yes. Wolverhampton Wanderers, they're about where I'd expect. Crystal Palace, the same. Chelsea, I think they've got significantly worse, actually, since replacing Tickles with Potter. That's 10th and down. Is there maybe some learning here, and should there maybe a bit of a sea change in that sacking the manager can't just be the thing that you do? Are we learning this year the fact that as we speak, there are 3 clubs without a permanent manager, that the old cupboard of Pardew, Pulis, Hodgson, whatever, it's bare. It's bare because everyone's been used so many times and those guys have retired. There's no Red Adair characters left anymore. That maybe there might be more David Moyes and Steve Cooper stories. There might be more Arteta stories who could have got sacked a year or so ago. There might be more Eric Ten Hag story. So, we did the joke about it. He's going to go after the Brentford game,
Yeah.
By the way, he's got less points than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first season at this point, but we can't do that today.
Yeah.
I mean, my weird speculation here is, I'd love your view on this. Should there be some sort of punishment for sacking your manager? Because at the moment, it happens so willy-nilly that I feel like there's got to be some sort of issue. And I would wonder whether, if you're going to sack your manager, you can't just be like, yeah, sack him, see what happens. There should be more of a, okay, you can sack your manager. You get your one get out of jail free card this season. You don't do it twice. That should be against the bloody rules, by the way. But you lose 3 points. You sack the manager, fine. But you lose 3 points. That's the trade. You've got to trade to replace your manager. Otherwise, it used to be, not always, it's not like rose-tinted glasses, but it used to be that, sometimes you had a bad season.
Yeah.
And sometimes you had a good season.
Yeah.
Brendan Rodgers is not a bad manager. Graham Potter is not a bad manager because of the last 24, 48, whatever it is, hours. So aren't they a bit obliged to let Graham Potter see this season through and see what he can do?
I just think if you are going to have to pay the manager out, that should have some type of hit on your operating budget, or maybe your television revenue. Maybe that goes into the kitty to be redistributed or goes to some type of charity. I think there's like theoretically, I think there's a good idea somewhere in there. It's the same old conversation, right? You're either paying for the mistakes of the manager, you're paying for the mistakes of the sporting director, for the players that you identified that maybe aren't up to snuff. Because at the end of the day, all of these conversations, player responsibility is very rarely talked about outside of downing tools. And there's no discernible, identifiable, where you're just like, oh yeah, no, he's doing that on purpose. He's not like turning around and booting the ball in his own goal. But the easiest way to get around this is go find a better manager, go find a better tactician, go find a better leader, go find a bigger, stronger voice that the immediacy of that group will start to listen to. But again, at this stage of the season, I unless you have someone 100% lined up that is going to be a better manager than the one you just fired, what's the point?
What is the point?
I get it's a ton of money. I get that we're talking about Premier League money versus the parachute money into the championship, and there's no immediacy, and 100% you're coming right back up. But I mean, what's like Chelsea's in 11th position? Like, outside of your ego hurting, if you're Todd Bowley, what is the point?
See it through if you're Todd Bowley, right?
Yeah.
See it through. And if they win the Champions League or they beat Real Madrid, you can still in the summer say, look, it didn't work out, buddy, but you know what? I gave you that rope. I gave you that leeway. I gave you that ability to prove to me what you could do. And there's been this is why managers these days can't survive adversity.
Yeah.
Because no one goes through any adversity. Yeah. They either have a good time or they get the sack.
Yeah.
And it's such a fundamental cultural problem with this entire stupid industry, because there's certain financial targets that must be met and all that sort of stuff. But if you give someone that job, sometimes it's going to go badly.
Look at Arteta.
Look at Arteta. But look, I would even take away Arteta. You can look at David Moyes this season, right? If he keeps West Ham up, right? If he keeps West Ham up, and God knows I have been on the fence about it, as you know, and I think he probably could have gone earlier in the season because it feels like that is over. But let's go back to his time at Everton. There were times when they were 17th and they could have gone down. The next year they were battling for 4th and 5th. The next year they were struggling again. Look at Brendan Rodgers. If he'd have seen this season out and kept them up, he could have handshakes all round and gone, I won him the FA Cup. There was 2 top 5 finishes. The last season weren't so great, but that's the way it goes. Instead, no one knows how to get through these times because no one lives through these times anymore. It's super dumb. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to move on to a couple of other bits, but I've got to ask you this. Let's bring Tim in here as well, because I know Tim's annoyed with this because of all the swearing. But let's do today's Week in the Tackle quiz. How many managers sacked this season can you name? We'll go with Dunny, on to Tim, one at a time, and the first one to get one wrong is out, because I think you can do this. So there are 12 sackings. Dunny, we'll start with you. Name me one.
Conte.
Antonio Conte was sacked on the 26th of March at Tottenham. Yes, Tim.
Steven Gerrard.
Steven Gerrard, Liverpool legend and Aston Villa person was sacked on October the 20th? Yes, Dunny.
Timmy Tickles.
Timmy Tickles, incredibly, was sacked all the way back in September the 7th at Chelsea. Tickles win. Tim.
Our man, Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh, God bless him, and all who sail in his unemployability, was sacked on my birthday, February the 6th at Leeds United. Dunny.
Graham Potter.
Graham Potter was indeed sacked on Sunday, just gone as Chelsea manager. You can also get double points for that as he resigned at Brighton. So you get double points in this really important quiz. Tim.
Frank Lampard.
Yes, that was this season. Sorry, I thought that was another season.
Yeah, it was this season. I was like,
blew
wait
my
a minute.
mind.
Yeah.
I thought he'd done it there. Frankie Lampard was sacked as Everton manager on the 23rd of January. Correct. Dunny.
Patrick Vieira.
Patrick Vieira was sacked at Crystal Palace on the 17th of March. Tim.
This was this season, right? Scott Parker?
Scott Parker was sacked on the 30th of August as Bournemouth manager. And inexplicably, yes, that was this season, which still has like 10 weeks to go. Dunny.
Bruno Lage.
Oh, that is a deep reach. And it's a correct reach. Bruno Lage was sacked on October the 2nd as manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers.
We haven't talked about him quite yet. Brendan Rodgers.
Who?
My accent's worse. Yeah.
He was Irish.
That sounded like Billy Connolly joined us on the podcast. Yes, Brendan
Rodgers.
Rodgers on Sunday, as well as Leicester City manager. I think
we're at 11.
We've got 2 left that you haven't mentioned.
Ralph Hasenhüttl.
Oh, it's terrific. It's terrific. Ralph Hasenhüttl was sacked on the 7th of November, leaving just one manager left that we haven't listed.
I mean, that sparked the memory. Is it Nathan Jones?
Oh, guys, Nathan Jones.
Did we really get them all?
The unbelievably unpopular Nathan Jones, who could have married a woman in Wales.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
What an idiot. But he was sacked on the 12th of February. There you go. Victory all round. Victory in Europe. VE
Well
Day.
done, horsey.
We fucking nailed it, Dunny.
Yeah, buddy.
Hashtag sorry, Danny. And there's a great tweet from Graham Rutherford. I wanted to bring this to you, which I loved. Roberto De Zerbi is now the 11th longest serving manager in the Premier League.
It's crazy.
Appointed in September. One other thing I wanted to bring up in this discussion before we're out of time, and that is the whole Christian Stellini thing. I know we've spoken a little bit about it, but I did the game, the Everton game. Which
You were on one. I threw it in the group chat. You were so aggressively frustrated, and I could just picture you visually matching that frustration because I was listening in the car on Sirius XM FC channel 157, and like I literally sent you messages like you are fucking on one right now. Sorry, Tim.
I was so furious. At it. Not just because I need Everton to lose games for West Ham to stay up, though that I'm sure was part of it subconsciously, but watching Tottenham right now, like that, if you want to know what a manager does and why teams hire a manager, watch that game.
Yeah.
Because it was such an abysmal performance from Tottenham. And yes, they were winning the game because of the penalty given to Harry Kane and converted by him. But the way they played, when they were winning in that game and they had the ball in their own penalty area, and Lloris gave it to Longley, but didn't put it into Dyer, who tried to dribble out from his own penalty area and lost it. And then 30 seconds later, they did it again. Højbjerg was passing it into touch. No one knew what to do because there was no plan. And it's to your point right at the top of the program. You can give the players a certain amount of leeway, but in the end, there's got to be a director of operations. If the game plan is random scrimmage, then you can allow the players to do what they want. Otherwise, someone has got to have a plan. And going back to, it ties all this together, that performance last night on Monday night. It was such a joke. It was such nonsense. It made no sense. Every single element of it was confused and confusing, even to Lucas Moura's sending off, which was just so brainless as it all was. And it was almost annoying they nearly won it. You cannot give Stellini that job for the next 9 games, because if Tottenham Hotspur are going to attract a Nagelsmann, which they might not because he might be going to Chelsea, but let's say they want to, They ain't going to do it in the Europa League, not in the Conference League. And right now, they're sitting in fourth, having played more than Man U. It's unlikely. They've got to win pretty much every single game. They're not going to do it with essentially the janitor in charge for the next 9 games. And yet they seem happy to do it. That was the moment I'd have gone, Levy right then. I'd gone, right, we've got to get someone. I'd have even called bloody Allardyce, because at least somebody, Allardyce could come in and work with that team because they're already playing Allardycean football. So why not give it to someone?
Yeah.
Thank you. Not my first time. So why would you let this guy, who's just not a manager, have the future of your club in the palm of his hand?
Again, it goes back to why are we? Why would you allow the guy who was the number one for the manager who just walked out or you just fired to be the same? It's the same voice. It's the same vision. They're seeing the game in the exact same way. And listen, I get that it's easy. You're still paying him, so why not? You're at least paying him to do something. I know that when Conte was in Italy for the alleged surgery, that they get dumped out. I mean, there's no track record of success with Stellini as well. It's not like he's come in and all of a sudden this team's turned over a team 4-0. It's like, oh, relaxing, fun, exciting. Not at all. Panic mode. And by the way, quick, can we just, this whole, I get we do this thing where we're like, oh, I need a true number 6. I need a box-to-box 8. I need a true winger, number 7. We do this thing, right, where we just do this random descriptiveness. We're a build out of the back team. This bullshit. Sorry, Tim. Absolute bullshit. Sorry, Tim. Of being I'm a center back. I'm going to play a soft left-footed pass into the right foot of my keeper, who's going to set himself up with the dominant left foot to then play a ball 15 feet to his right to the other center back, who will then play a ball to the right back, who will play the ball to the defensive midfielder, who will lay it back to the center back, and then I will find the right midfielder, who will then lay it back to the defensive midfielder. He will then play it to the forward, who will drop it to the winger, and then the opposite winger will make a run, and he will just dump the ball into space, and that is a breakaway. I mean, what the is happening? Sorry, Tim, I'm stopping. I promise. What in the flying squirrel is happening? Why? What are we doing? This whole goal kick thing, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why are we doing this? Why are we watching teams that obviously are practicing their patterns of play every single week of how to build in the back? They're getting pressed to God's no end, left and right. And we're seeing balls just lump the ball 20 yards, 50 yards forward, win the second ball. If you can't win a header, win the second ball in the midfield, push your team up, get the ball away from your goal. This whole, this incessant drive to try to teach defenders how to play out of the back with literally a press of 6 makes zero effing sense. 0 sense. I don't get it.
It's insane.
Especially when you have a lead and you're on the road. You're just inviting. And by the way, not for nothing.
1-0 up at Everton with 10 minutes to go.
You're inviting the fan base to jump onto the back of the players to give them even more momentum. And then you start to second guess yourself. You start to panic. You start not running because you don't want the ball. You start hiding. Everything becomes that much worse. If you're winning and you don't have the player profile of defenders that can build out of the back, stop fucking playing out of the back. Sorry, Tim.
And don't do it 1-0 up at Goodison Park with a janitor as your manager. Jesus. When, I don't know, put it in their half. Call me old-fashioned, but you're not going to concede a goal if the ball is in their half of the field. If you're going to play out,
we play modern football.
Though, but even if they do 2 or 3 passes and then, release it. The challenge isn't keep it in your area for as long as possible.
That's you play modern football? We play modern football. We play out of the back from a goal kick. Modern football.
When teams do it well, they do it with a plan. That was incredible. That really was incredible. You're like a Bollywood superstar. That was amazing.
That's amazing.
I can't think of a single Bollywood superstar. Amir Khan, isn't he a famous actor?
Yeah. Close. No.
It feels right.
Only when you fix it.
We're probably out of time. But I will say our Friday predictions came true. on the Brief Friday pod, and that was pretty good. Our predictions came true 100%, including the fact that Everton Tottenham was going to be diabolical, but also super entertaining. Michael Keane, by the way, we've got no time, but
Vincent Company-esque.
Sweet Baba O'Reilly. That was so cool. That was absolutely incredible for someone who won the Golden Raspberry for worst player in the Premier League last season. Danny, where were you? Where are you? What's going on in the world of MLS?
Yeah, I was down at FC Dallas. Who did they play? Portland Timbers. Great goal at the end. Frank Boley came off the bench on his debut, got the game-tying goal in the dying moments of that match. Had some travel delays. It was a disaster. Worked my way through it. And then this weekend, I got a good one with Brados. We are up in Seattle Sounders at home against St. Louis City SC. Expansion team. They lost on a penalty at home to Minnesota United. Adrian Heath. Old Inchy and company got the 3 points, but this is number 1, number 2 teams in the Western Conference. Going to be a phenomenal game this weekend. So that'll be on Apple TV. Be a fun one.
And we'll look ahead to that on our Thursday and Friday. Are you in Thursday, Friday this week on Sirius XM? You doing both?
I am. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay.
Show for work.
We will look ahead to all that on the Sirius XM FC show for subscribers in the United States of America. We'll also be talking on our next podcast on Friday about the fact I'm going to West Ham Newcastle on Wednesday. I might be deliriously happy, and I might be, as usual, bloody miserable. So that's all coming up. Subscribe on various platforms. If you're not already subscribed, you're watching on YouTube, subscribe on the podcast. If you're on the podcast, watch us on YouTube, subscribe there. Follow us on Twitter, which I think still exists if it's not been bought by Dogecoin. And also leave us a review. The funniest one ever was read out on Friday's program. We love the funny reviews. We're going to give them a real solid reading on shows and also ask us some questions too on our various platforms, and we'll answer them on the Friday podcast. Cheers, everyone. See you next time.